also an education side. So we can practice both parts of our mission, which would be the rehabilitation side and then the education side of things. And not
So
only
an education
can animals come
side.
here to go through our hospital and get better and get released back out into the wild, but we now can have visitors, field trips, meetings and events here to take part in what we have here at Liberty Wildlife. Let people come in.
All right, there they all come.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. We're so excited to have you joining us for so much, Laura, your team. It's so exciting. Liberty Wildlife has been an excellent partner during the 10th season of the Arizona SciTech Festival. The Birds of Prey presentation, the reptiles in the desert was, I mean, just having those props and engaging things to look at during a virtual session has really been popular so far during the 10th season. So we want to say thank you. And we're so excited that you brought some friends along today for a STEM career panel about Liberty Wildlife.
Yeah, we've been really excited to partake in this. Of course, we joined Nova on his first birthday on January 27th, which Nova is my birthday too. So it was a great celebration day. So every year we'll be able to celebrate together. Lots of fun doing all the different programs that we've done, getting our volunteers involved, and of course, reaching out all across the country. I've heard of some friends throughout the East Coast even. I think one of our programs, we had somebody from India watching. It's been really great to get out outside of where we can normally talk because of this new format. At Liberty Wildlife, we usually are talking a lot about the animals and showing off our animals. And if you search us up online or go to our social media, that's what you're going to see is the animals. And that's what we focus on and you learn the most about. But you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes and who's actually helping run this facility. So I've always wanted to do a panel with those of us that are here that are making Liberty Wildlife function, because there aren't many of us that are paid to be here. We're also not paid a lot to be here. So it's definitely a moment, you know, it's something that really calls to us and to our hearts. And we work really well together as a team and a family. And I'd love to introduce you to all the people that I work with, or some of the people I work with. There's about 10 of us that are paid on staff to be here to do the various jobs. Most of our work is done by people like you, volunteers. So we have about 250 to 300 volunteers that really help us function. So I think the way that we're gonna do this today is we're just gonna spend a couple minutes on each of us talking a little bit about ourselves, maybe what brought us to Liberty, what we do at Liberty, and give a little bit of background about us and our roles here. And then we'll have time for some Q&A. But I think both Kelly and I can be monitoring the chat. If you have any questions, you can type them in there, and we certainly will try and answer them as best we can. And then I believe we do have some breakout sessions a little bit later where we can all go separately and learn a little bit more in depth about everything. So with that, I am going to throw it over to the boss lady, to Megan Mosby, and take it away, Megan.
Okay, well, you said it all. I don't have much to say, but I will. I am probably the longest lived person here. I started in 1984 when Dr. Orr was just starting her family, and there were 2 other volunteers. And it just called to my heart. I was an educator. I was a teacher for a long time, and fell in love with animals from early on, and found a place here where I could do both of the things that I like so much. And you know, I have, you can see here, there's llamas there because I used to raise llamas, and I've had iguanas and cats and dogs and parrots and snakes, and there's probably, you'd be hard pressed to find something I haven't had at some point. And when I lucked into Liberty Wildlife, I just found a way to satisfy all my favorite things. And so I started at the bottom, and there's hardly anything at Liberty that I haven't done. There are a few things which we won't go into, but you know, the pictures here you can see are events. My job is to make sure that all the programs, number one, are paid for, and number two, that they all dovetail well together and that we stay within the functions of the law. And so that's kind of what I do. I'm originally from Texas. I have a degree in education and I have a master's degree. I have a degree in bachelor's of science. I have a master's degree in education and I have a credentials in nonprofit management. So I found a way to work myself into a new job after I retired from teaching. So I'm trying to see if these pictures, I mean, the picture of me, that's a Halloween costume. I do not go around with feathers on my neck all the time. And I'm trying to think what else is here. Driving my brother's boat down on the coast and I spent some time in Texas. And I guess that's really all I have to say. Is there anything I've left off, Laura, that you want me to talk about?
Well, Kelly, if you want to go ahead and advance to the next slide, you can go into a little bit more detail about what
Right.
your roles are and what you kind of have to do on a day-to-day basis here at Liberty Wildlife.
So, number one, I had to build this facility. We were in our veterinarian side yard for many years, and she decided she wanted to retire and move to Panama, which left it up to me to find some land and to build a building, raise the money, and we've pretty much gotten it paid for. We've still got some debt, but not much. But we built a beautiful building. It's a LEED platinum building, which is the best environmental building rating you could get. We do a lot of things here. If you look at the top, there's a little activity we do with kids called Sit Spot, which is an activity which helps kids get into nature. And I guess if you look deep down into my soul, nature is what it's all about. The bottom picture talks about we do our Wishes for Wildlife event here. We did until COVID came along. And then there's an auction item. We have a great silent auction, and that's kind of fun. And then the bottom is releasing a bald eagle, which was one of my favorite things to do, is to be able to put animals back in the wild. So I do a little bit of everything. And but mainly it's to make sure that all the programs run smoothly and that we are able to implement our vision.
All right, we can go to the next slide. That just is going to be pretty much the same for all of us. If you need to get in touch with Megan for any way, but we'll have a question and answer session in a little bit. So think of those questions for Megan when we come back. And in the meantime, we can jump right over to Jan Miller. You're not muted, or you're still muted.
Do you know how to unmute? Hold on, I'll come.
Got it.
Got it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Hi, I'm Jan Miller. I'm the animal care coordinator here at Liberty Wildlife, which is basically I am in charge of all of the animals that come into the facility, you know, through the rehabilitation side and also the animals that are in education. So I end up having to have a large amount of animals that we look at and we take care of to try to make sure that they're getting the best help that they can have and be sure that they get their regular well checks, things like that, and that the rehabilitation animals are brought in and then sent back out when they're ready to go, and make sure everything's good for them and that they'll have the best success rate that they possibly can when they do go back out. So, and then I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. It's a far away from here, and it was something that I grew up, you know, and there really is bluegrass in Kentucky. It's a beautiful state, but I don't ever want to live back there again because I did fall in love with the desert when we moved out here in 1974 with my family. When I did live back east, you know, same like Megan, it's like, you know, you fall in love with nature. Luckily, we had woods that were behind our house. So we were able to go out back and, you know, down the street and head out down and play in the creek and in the woods and find tadpoles and critters and things like that. So always had a love for that. One of the big things that I did too, that, you know, I have a love for animals, all animals, especially dogs. And when I was a kid, I used to go door to door and knock on doors and take people's dogs for walks. You know, it was just one of the things that I like to do. So that led me into, once I moved out here and finished school, I did go to veterinary technician school and did a couple years at ASU as well, which led me into working into an animal clinic. And I found Liberty Wildlife back in 1987. Along with Megan, we're probably a few of the longest lived volunteers and now workers that are here in that sense. And we just, you know, we keep going and keep going, but it took me into the veterinary side, took me into working closely with Dr. Orr so that I learned a lot about the exotic animals and the birds and fell in love with it, with the thought of hopefully someday I would actually work here. So I volunteered for 13 years before I got hired. And once I got hired on, things just kept coming. And I was very similar with, I've worked in every area here at Liberty, except having to raise money, because not something that's in my book. And, but being sure that all these animals are taken care of. And if you're looking at the screen right there, you can see we've got a whole bunch of these animals that come in. And while we're here at Liberty, we work very closely with different veterinarians. I have veterinarians that have started to volunteer here, which is great, because a lot of the veterinarians out there where animals may go, they don't have a good sense of what wildlife needs. And so if we can help them learn, that's even better for all the wildlife that's out there. It's better for us. So when they do come here, they've actually been stabilized and, had the correct medications and things like that. And one of the other fun things that we're doing here now is we're working very closely with Midwestern University, so that they've got a lot of vet students that are finding an interest in it, and they're coming out and they're learning as well. So hopefully some of these guys will be going out and find an interest in it and seek out other volunteer opportunities as well and help out the wildlife that's out there. So in the one picture that we had there, one of my passions too is we've been raising and rescuing wolf dogs for about 30 years, my husband and I. We ended up with getting our first couple and fell in love with the breed, which is a breed not for everybody, not something everybody should have, but they're really fun to have. So, we actually have a very howling good time at our house very often. In fact, the other night, there was a great horned owl that was hooting. It was kind of funny outside, and it would hoot, and then the wolves would howl, and it would hoot, and the wolves would howl. So it was kind of an entertaining night, needless to say. But if you're looking at the slides right there, you can see we do a variety of the animals that are here, mostly birds, but we've got a hawk and a bat, and bats are pretty cool. They're one of the fun species that we get to do, but they are something you have to be very careful with if you're going to be picking those up. And then you've got the little fox that actually is getting a bath because he had a lot of stuff on him. So, we're doing a lot of really good work here. We love what we do. We have tons of volunteers that we teach that learn how to help take care and triage these animals. And that's one of the other things that I do is we teach a class and get everybody going and learn how to actually, so we can take care of them, triage them until the veterinarians get to look at them. We do have the ability to do x-rays at this new facility, which is awesome, because we used to have to drive them to a clinic that would, when they had time and an opening, we'd be able to get some x-rays. So it kind of expedites the care that the animals get. And the other side of what I do is I do help with training some of the birds here that we use for our education department and do education. And that's a fun part of my job. That's one of the things that I really enjoy here, is working with these new animals and watching them come along to become good educators and ambassadors for their species, so that they can become something that people can watch and learn from, to learn to appreciate nature and love what they do, and kind of enjoy everything about what we're doing to help save these animals and save our planet. So is that my 5 minutes, or do I have more time?
No, that was your 5 minutes.
Okay.
All of us can talk a lot about everything. So that was Jan Miller, Animal Care Coordinator. I get to step in now since I'm probably the loudest out of all of everyone. So my name is Laura Hackett, and I am the Education Coordinator and Wildlife Biologist. I actually kind of, when you work at a nonprofit and there's only 10 staff members at a place this large, you end up wearing many, many hats. So I think all of us have shown you so far that there's a bunch of different titles that we fill. So those are my top two that I spend most of my time working with on a day-to-day basis. Kelly, next slide. So just a quick about me. I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, so I was an East Coast kid. Like you've heard from Megan and Jan, love nature, was always outside, spent my summers at a nature center camp. When I grew too old to go to camp there, I volunteered to become a counselor there. I couldn't fathom not spending my summers out in the woods with everybody. And so that became my first job. Then finally the next year they hired me on as a full counselor. And I've just always been involved with nature ever since then. I went to college in upstate New York with the intent of being a marine biologist. I, grew up on the coast, so I wanted to be by water and play with the whales and dolphins and, seals and anything in the water that I could splash around with. So I went to Australia for my junior year of college and found out that everybody wants to do that. That's the fun stuff. So very few of you actually end up getting to do that job. So I finished up my degree and kind of tried to figure out where life would take me. And I ended up in a landlocked state here in the desert. So I came out here for my master's at ASU. And at that time, while I was doing my studies, I was volunteering at the Humane Society and was walking dogs, getting to have that love. And they had a position open up for one of the emergency animal medical technicians. So I got trained and working in the field and doing triage of the animals, the strays that were out in the field, and getting them back to the shelter to get them help. While I was working at the Humane Society, I started volunteering at the Phoenix Zoo, and that was playing with my other favorite animals, which are goats. So I was in the goat yard, which is, if you ever watch any of the other programs that Kelly and I have done together, I try to bring the goats on as much as possible. And while I was volunteering, or when I finally got the job at the zoo, I started working there as a zookeeper and a presenter. And as I was working there, I was volunteering at this wonderful place called Liberty Wildlife in my spare time. And when Megan and the team fabulously raised enough funds to open this facility, they stole me away from the zoo so that I could come here and help with the education program and get some on-site programs going. What's cool is Liberty Wildlife, the reason I started volunteering with them was actually because I was doing a rescue through the Humane Society. It was mostly dogs and cats, but one day we got a call for a great horned owl with his wing stuck in barbed wire. And I went out and had no idea what to do with it. It was hanging there, it was clacking its beak at me, it scared me. And so I called Liberty Wildlife to come out and rescue me with my rescue. And Terry Stevens, our recently retired director of operations, came out and he just literally walked up to the owl, gloves on hands, cut the barbed wire, grabbed the owl, put it in a box and brought it to Liberty Wildlife to see Jan to get fixed up. He just made it look so easy. But what was cool is I got to follow along and see the owl get fixed by Jan and the team and then eventually released. And I started volunteering right then and there and haven't left. They haven't let me leave and I haven't wanted to leave. So next slide, we'll see what I do here. Education coordinator is what I was brought here for. And I facilitate all the field trips on site, the on-site programming. You can come visit us during open hours. We have animals out for you to see and volunteers here to show you around and teach you what's going on here. It's been hard, so it's been really great that we've been able to work with the SciTech Fest to get more programming out via these virtual platforms. A really fun part of my job, and one part that Jan and I were both doing this morning, is our research and conservation department. You'll see the picture here of somebody in the ground. We work a lot with habitat that's being disrupted and animals having to be displaced. So we have biologists that will go out and survey land. We can go out and move animals that are in harm's way of being demolished because of construction. So that picture in the dirt right there is going to get a burrowing owl out of its home before construction is going to come. Jan and I were out this morning monitoring eagles' nests because there was work nearby and we wanted to make sure that they weren't getting disturbed by the work going on. So it's a really fun opportunity for us to get outside and be in the wild helping the animals, hands-on out there. The other thing is PR media, and that's slowly something I'm learning, and Kelly's doing a fabulous job with all of these programs. So I'm learning from her every time I do a program with her. But yeah, those are probably the main jobs. The cute little fuzzball down there in the corner is another one of my favorite animals. That's Groot. He's our Coatimundi. He is one that somebody tried to keep as a pet when he was a baby. Some states allow you to have them as pets, but they are in the raccoon family and act very much like raccoons. They've got long nails, sharp fangs, curious nature, very agile, and they just will get into every cabinet in your house. So he eventually got confiscated because he was in a a state where they are not allowed to be kept as pets. And so he was brought to Liberty Wildlife actually just 3 years ago, last week. And so he had some bad manners, but we've worked with him and we can get him on a harness now and walk him around during our public hours sometimes. So Kelly, go ahead and you can go forward. That's my contact information. And yeah, anytime, you can always search us up online. Our website has a lot of information if you ever have any questions for any of us in the future. But that was my job in a nutshell. So we're going to send it over to Robert.
All right. So my name is Robert Mesta, and I'm a retired ornithologist. I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for approximately 40 years, excuse me. Wow. Yeah. Anyway, time flies. But during that period of time, I had a long association with Liberty Wildlife. During that time, one of the programs that I coordinated was the Southwest Bald Eagle program. And during that time, I worked very closely with Liberty Wildlife. We often would have orphaned or injured eagles that we, during that program, and we'd bring them into Liberty Wildlife, and they'd take care of them for us, basically. And then after I retired from the Fish and Wildlife Service in 2015, shortly after that, I actually went to work for Liberty Wildlife. But that was after a very long association, and it was something I was very happy to do. So what I do is I coordinate the Liberty Wildlife Non-Eagle Feather Repository. It's kind of an esoteric kind of sounding program, but it's extremely significant and relevant. Liberty Wildlife is the only organization that's currently permitted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the federal government, to accept, hold, and distribute feathers to Native Americans for religious and ceremonial purposes. One of the significant points to be aware of was until we started operating the non-eagle feather repositories, Native Americans did not have a legal source of feathers for over 100 years. That's a very long time. And during that period of time, what happened is that, number one, of course, Native American tribes were impacted negatively because they couldn't access feathers. They needed to construct their religious and ceremonial regalia and implements. And secondly, during that period of time, because there was no legal source of feathers, the black market was created, and literally every year thousands of birds are killed and taken illegally out of the wild. So even though the goals of the non-eagle feather repository are twofold, basically. First, obviously, we want to help sustain Native American cultures by providing them the feathers that they need to support their culture. But secondly, also to help fight the black market. If we can provide a legal source of feathers, which we do, and if we can provide them at no cost, which we do, then hopefully Native Americans will come to us for their feathers. They won't buy them off the black market. And if they're not buying them off the black market, there's not a profit, and hopefully people will stop shooting and taking birds out of the wild, which really, really is a shame. So the job I hold here at Liberty is unique in that I recycle dead things. Right. So because these birds come in, some don't make it, which is really, really unfortunate, but they come to us and we give them a second life. We like to say that we give new life to feathers that can no longer fly. And that's in essence what we do. We take those feathers and those carcasses that have passed away, we put them in our inventory here, and then by applications, Native Americans can apply for them and utilize them. So it's a very cool program in that it's significant on a cultural basis and on an environmental conservation basis. And we do it by recycling feathers that can no longer fly. And so what I do is it's basically a little bit of everything. You know, I recruit feather donations from other parts of the country. This is a national program. We send feathers out to Native Americans throughout the United States. And so far, we've sent feathers to over 200 different tribes and probably about 45 different states. And I think last count we had sent out, we're probably approaching 5,000 orders right now, which represents thousands and thousands of feathers. So it's a program that has a significant impact. And it's a program too that demonstrates the diversity of conservation that Liberty Wildlife delivers. I mean, nobody else is doing this. It's a wonderful complement to the work that Laura and Jan do. And it's a testimony to Megan's, what do I say, foresight to see the value in a tool like this. Like I said, both for conservation and for cultural sustainability, that she would bring this program into Liberty Wildlife. And so anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Robert.
You're
Yep,
welcome.
way to get in touch with Robert too. So, well, we've already gotten a question. This is great. So Robert, where do the eagle feathers go? Because we're the non-eagle feather repository.
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so yeah, we are the non-eagle feather repository, which is everything but eagles. You know, everything from condors to hummingbirds. But if people want eagle feathers, they have to apply to the National Eagle Repository that's operated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and located in Commerce, Colorado. And they've been in existence since the early 70s.
Very good. Go ahead and type away any other questions. In the meantime, Megan, I have one for you. What is the most challenging part of your job at Liberty Wildlife, or one of the most? There might be a couple. Unmute yourself.
I said putting up with you guys, but I was on. You know, I suppose keeping us relevant is the thing that I worry about the most. I worry about making sure that I can pay to support the food bill and those kinds of things. But I think mainly it's making us relevant and to make sure that we are carrying out our mission. And with you guys, it's not a problem.
We do, and we have a fabulous following that I think throughout the 40 years of Liberty Wildlife, we've gotten so many people to support us and learn more about us. But it's funny too that sometimes people will drive by on the bike trail that we have here or do a U-turn on Elwood and see us and just say that they had no idea that we existed. So we still have a lot in our path to try and get the word out there. Jan, I have a question for you. What kind of problems do you face on a day-to-day basis? Kind of what are the challenges you see daily? Unmute yourself.
And Jan, unmute yourself.
Classic Zoom. It's
Got
okay.
it. Got it. So in terms of like the cases that we see, you mean? Because a lot of the cases that we see, you know, I mean, probably some of the more frustrating things that you see are things like gunshot, you know, and I think a lot of that has to do with people who aren't educated and aren't aware of the damage that they're doing to this particular animal or the beauty of that animal and its impact on a family that it may have or something along those lines. So a lot of it is the injuries can be really trying some days. And especially as we get busier, you know, you get a lot of tree trimming and a lot of babies that come in from tree trimming because people always trim their trees in the spring instead of the fall. You know, when the springtime is when everything's growing and blooming. So I kind of get it, but that's also when the birds and the animals are starting their families and they're starting as well. So, you know, it's just things like that that kind of you see over and over and over again, and it can be a little trying some days. So.
Sure. And we're getting into the busy season soon. So we're all trying to rest up right now. So, Robert, what advice would you give to your younger self when you were exploring options for a career, or that you might give to some of our young viewers right now?
Well, I think that if you have an inkling about what you might want to do with your life, I think it's really important to explore it, you know, all facets, so you get a good idea of what it involves, and you can do this on the internet or you can do it at the library, but more importantly, put yourself out there and take advantages of opportunities, like volunteering at Liberty Wildlife would be a perfect one. So anyway, that would be my advice.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. So Megan, I'm going to pick on you since you were a self-proclaimed, longest term person here. Looking back throughout the years, what has been one of your favorite animals or stories that we've had through our history here? Unmute.
Unmute.
Oh, okay. So I have a lot of stories to tell because there have been a lot of years here. But for anyone who knows me, they know that my favorite animal is a golden eagle. So, in fact, the first thing I ever did with Liberty Wildlife was to release a golden eagle, which is pretty far out there. And if I just thinking back about telling the young people here, I mimic what Robert says: volunteer, get involved, put yourself out. And one of the things I think people forget about is learn how to communicate. I think that is so important. Maybe your communication is art or music or writing or whatever. There's a lot of ways that you can be involved, but communication is huge. So don't forget that.
And don't forget to unmute yourself when you're communicating.
That's a good point.
Jan, we have somebody asking, can anyone volunteer, or do you have to have a degree or be in school for animal care?
No, luckily anybody can volunteer here at Liberty Wildlife. You just go online and fill out the information on volunteer, and our volunteer coordinator will get in touch with you. I learned everything I know on the job here as far as dealing with birds and animals like that, because it is all different. Each animal is different, the way you take care of them and stuff. And I started out in daily care and I worked my way up into different avenues and helped with fundraising and a few other things. But my passion is with the animals. So you can absolutely volunteer. Just sign up. Come on out. We can use you.
For sure. Jane was asking, what are the current challenges to our mission during COVID? What is the first thing our organization wants to do when it's safe again to do programs in person again? And I can speak to the fact that programs really shut down for us at a busy time of year. It happened in March that we had to stop doing everything, and that was spring break, and schools were doing a lot of field trips. We lost all of that ability to reach out to people. So that was tough. I know in terms of being here in the hospital, a lot of volunteers did not feel safe coming and taking care of the animals, but the animals did need to eat and get treated every single day. So we needed people here. So those that were able and felt safe enough to come in really stepped up and did a great job. We're masked up. We try to social distance as much as you can, but you'll see on vet nights, for instance, Jan works very close with some of our volunteer vets, and you have to be right on top of each other when you're holding an animal and trying to examine. So they would use the N95 masks and glove up. And we, knock on wood, have been really lucky. So we're hoping that we will see COVID disappear or lessen. We're positive, thinking positively right now. And I know I want bigger programs. We had events called Sip in the Spirit of the Southwest, where we'd have music and fun and games and drinks and food. We've had movie nights here, and we were able to have bigger field trips. Right now, sizes are limited. So I'm just excited to have people back here at Liberty Wildlife to see what we've built up here. So Megan, we have a question here for you. I guess it kind of goes along with what you're saying about the Eagles, but what was one of the most rewarding experiences you've had at Liberty Wildlife?
Most rewarding, because I've come so far along this path, I think for me is getting this building built was the most probably the most rewarding. It was a lot of hard work, but it was such a bonus.
Jan, do you have an idea how many animals we currently have on site?
On the rehab side, we probably have close to 100. And then on education, we have like 60, 74, I think, education animals here on site. So it's a good group, nice group.
Robert, what is the most common species of bird that you get asked for from some of the Native Americans?
Oh yeah. So, okay, I'm not moved yet. Yeah, so that's an easy one. Red-tailed hawk, the adult red-tailed hawk. It has a beautiful red tail, and boy, there's high demand for ceremonial fans.
And so what's the rarest or the hardest for you to get a hold of that you've been asked for?
Oh, we get a lot of, I got a request for a harpy eagle once. I had to explain to them that they were a native of Central America and southern Mexico and stuff, and that they would never get one. They persisted, but anyway. But anhingas, scissor tails are tough that we get requests for, and unfortunately, we just can't fill those.
Yeah. Somebody was asking about our hours for visits. Luckily, we are able to have the smaller groups come in. So we're open Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. It's a $5 admission fee for everybody 5 and older. You come in and you obviously can't go into the hospital because that's where the animals are getting treated and we want them to have low stress, but we have windows that look into our triage room and into our surgery suite. So you can see some of the things that are going on. It's going to get busy as more and more babies are born in the spring. You'll see a pretty busy room. You'll get to look into the non-eagle feather repository. If Robert or some of the volunteers are there, we'll open it up and show you some of the artifacts that we have in there. And then of course you go over to our education side and we have a interpretive trail with owls and hawks and eagles and all the non-releasable birds of prey and a black-crowned night heron that cannot survive back out in the wild. So we care for them here and they become our ambassador animals. We also have reptiles, a couple squirrels, some arachnids. So we really do have a little bit of everything here. Jan, what was one of the trickiest animals that you've had to work with? Either education-wise or medical-wise?
Rehab animals can be a little tricky depending on what's going on. And I remember there was a ringtail cat that came in that had a broken leg and it was splinted. And that little cat managed to get out of the cage on the person that was cleaning that day. And we were in a little room and we lost that cat for probably about 2 hours before we discovered where that little booger was. Because even on 3 legs, he was way faster than we could ever be. And trying to catch him was kind of interesting. And we ended up finding him. This was at the old facility, and there was a hole in a wall that didn't go all the way into the wall, but he managed to get himself in there. And as we were looking and shining flashlights, we could see this little face popping out. And so we ended up managing having to get him out of the wall. So that would be our trickiest, I'm guessing.
That is a good one. They are tricky. Megan, we have a great question right here. In what ways can people support your team at Liberty Wildlife?
Okay, there's lots of ways. Number one, by volunteering. That's that unpaid labor of love is huge. I think our equivalent volunteer hours last year was over $1,800,000. So that's what I would have to pay to have all these people help. But the other things, we do sponsor our orphan care program. We sponsor raptors. We have, donations, bequests. There's a lot of ways to give monetarily, of your time. Word of mouth is huge. If you spread our mission, the more you spread our mission, the better we can do our job.
For sure. I think this is one of Kelly's favorite programs at Liberty Wildlife. So she's wondering, what is Goat-to meeting? And that's just, so, they play on the good old Goat-to meeting. We're all looking at each other's faces on screens now. So we kind of took advantage of that because we know that people also like seeing animals. And we will, sign on to your Zoom call or your Facebook call or, any program and bring a goat in and just literally have it staring at your team for a little while. We can do a whole program. We just had somebody request it and they would like us to jump in and show the eagles. And it can range anywhere from just really a quick 5-minute, just break up the monotony of some of the meetings that we have to go to these days, to actually making it an education program. So that program request is on our website, libertywildlife.org, and there you can find about private tours here, field trips here, the go-to meeting, other Zoom presentations. We are still doing some outreach throughout the state, going up to Verde Canyon Railroad and doing a couple of classrooms. It's limited because we only have so many people and it has to be a certain space and everything, but we're still trying to get ourselves out there and get our word out there.
I just
Hey,
wanted
Dan.
to say thank you for bringing the baby goats to Nova's birthday party.
Of course, they're fun. Everybody loves them here. And so that's actually really a good question. Like, why do we have goats at Liberty Wildlife? We take care of native wildlife, but they're not native, but they are part of our mission to be sustainable. And by having, this built-in lawn care with the goats that are eating our weeds, we don't have to use any kind of chemicals on the weeds that are popping up. So that's why they are here. Plus, they're adorable and we love them. Hey, Jan, Nova the gecko, who shares a birthday with me. So we need to make sure that, he stays around and is my buddy for a long time. Should he be concerned about any particular animals that are getting released here?
Nova might be careful. Watch out for the roadrunners.
Oh, yeah.
That could be a problem for you, Nova. Sorry. We have a couple that are ready to go too.
All right, we'll call you beforehand, Nova. We'll make sure you're out of town. All right. Well, I think, that was a lot of really great questions. I don't know if anybody else has anything else that they want to put in the chat right now, but
I'm just going to ask one time around the room to give us your final thoughts on participating today and participating in the 10th season of the Arizona SciTech Festival. Even though it's virtual, it has been truly a pleasure to be working with Laura and showcasing what you do at Liberty Wildlife. So let's start with Megan. Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Oh, let's see. I think my final thought would be for everyone here, and hopefully it's a bunch of youngsters, go out into nature, learn what your world is about, support it, take care of it, make it a value in your life. That's what I would like to impart.
That's wonderful. Thank you. What about you, Jan?
I think everybody should follow their dreams. If you dream about being a veterinarian or you dream about, being a biologist, go for it. Find out what you need to do to get there and follow that dream.
That's excellent advice. What about you, Robert?
I say that if you can't get out and enjoy nature, come to Liberty Wildlife and enjoy nature.
There you go.
I like that. That's perfect. I cannot wait. We actually have a VIP event. We're going to come down to Liberty Wildlife on the 27th. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the eagle. I served over 20 years in the Army, so it's very patriotic for me.
All
So
right.
I'm really excited to be bringing some chief science officers down there. So Laura, final thoughts before we close the meeting today. Thank you so much for organizing. This was perfect.
Oh yeah, no, this is really fun. And I have been wanting to do this. So I love that you opened this platform for us. They stole all the good answers. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to say that I've always volunteered. You heard my history before, and volunteering is the best way to get into any kind of job. Also, like Jan says, you want to get your experience and learn what it is you want to get into. By volunteering, you learn the ins and outs of each job. Plus, then you get to learn the team that you're working with. They get to know you. And Megan talked earlier about communication. A lot of it is getting to know one another, networking, and proving yourself in that job. And it has led to a job for me every single time that I've been in a volunteer position.
I tell the students that all the time that I engage with, even the adults that I engage with, that, you have to say yes to a couple of opportunities that you might not think are you, to experience and say, wow, I didn't know I liked that. I had no idea it's a career. So this week in the festival is thinking about STEM, right? Last week we were exploring options. First week we were getting started, and we really want people to stop and think, what makes you happy? And Jan was talking about it. Be passionate, enjoy what you do. And here at SciTech Institute, we really want to make a difference. And by hosting this program today, I think we actually were able to shout out, a little louder this year, even though it's virtual, but sharing on not only Facebook, but scitechinstitute.org. And we're going to reshare the link to this video. I really am truly excited about what we can do to help support Liberty Wildlife and your mission along with ours. So thanks again for being a panelist today. To my buddy Nova, thank